Hi, I'm Bill Koenig.
And I'm Tania.
Well, Tanya, it is never dull in the Middle East when it comes to Israel and its neighbors.
Yeah.
And then also now with President Trump being unpredictable, and the last 3 or 4 weeks following this whole situation, saga, drama, whatever you want to call it, here we are at a ceasefire stage.
Well, if you call it a ceasefire, which does not seem so for the world. And what really shocks me is the reactions that are coming from all over the world. And they are mocking President Trump, mocking America. And like I always said, NATO. I want you to understand that NATO never really helped America because I have heard from very knowledgeable people here in America, and they believe that Europe was a very truly ally. And just for you to have a figure, there is no data in the European Union from how many soldiers it went to Pakistan for since 2011 until 2021. There is no data. The only data that exists in all the countries in the European Union together is that there were about 1,700 deaths in 10 years. That's the only data. They don't know how many soldiers went to the Afghanistan to help America. They don't know how much hardware they sent, airplanes, parches, helicopters. There is no data. And so when you say that Europe is an ally, that's a lie. I believe. And I think it's the only president that has said that very clear. And he is right. He has his ways to say things, but this is a spiritual warfare. And it's not a time for the church to criticize or to say something. It's a time for the church to raise up and pray and fast. Because if you don't fast and pray and destroy these evil doings. I know Jesus is not coming back tomorrow. Believe me, it's going. We have a long way yet. We are going to that direction, but you have to pray and you have to be vigilant. That's what Jesus says: pray and watch. And instead of criticizing, instead of having your own thoughts, just pray for our president because that's biblical. To pray and support because I do love him. I do love this man that has a stand against every evil in the world. Macron is saying very bad things about President Trump, trying to destroy. And Macron, he says, with the finesse, the French finesse, the European finesse, in a very sharp way, in a very destructive way, but very sharp, deadly arrows. President Trump, he gets angry and he says sometimes things and he write things that he should not. But that's the way he is. But he has a good heart, and he is not. He's not pretending like like Mark Rutte yesterday, and like Macron, and like many others. So I think that is what I think at the moment, and I think you have a lot more to say.
Well, last year, the 12-day war was incredibly significant. Israel was masterful. The United States came in with B 2 bombers to take out what they believed was a significant part of the nuclear weapon development program. However, the uranium was not located. There still believes there's possibly up to 400 pounds of uranium somewhere in a cave in Iran. But also, I think what really motivated Israel and the United States, President Trump, was the fact that Iran was already rapidly replenishing the rockets, the missiles, and even their nuclear weapon program. I mean, when that war was over, they just went right after it and kept doing everything they could to rebuild what had been taken out. And we had to remember this. Persians are very, very smart, very strategic. There is admiration between Israelis or Jews and Persians. And another issue here was the slaughtering of up to 35,000 innocent Iranians. I mean, barbarian. Anybody that stood up against the Khomeini government was slaughtered. They were hung, they were put behind firing squads. And that really hit home. I mean, it affected President Trump, his administration. Obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu provided a lot of intel from Mossad, Israeli intel, as well as our own CIA intel. And Iran was very, very committed to getting a nuclear weapon. And they even fired a missile that went about 3,300 kilometers towards Diego Garcia. It was close to being. It actually sent two. One was knocked out, and the other one didn't make the target. But Iran is brash. They've been clobbered by Israel's Air Force, IDF. They've taken out a lot of very critical parts of that government. They've taken out Khomeini, the supreme leader, top military leaders, top religious leaders, and even Khomeini's son, who was picked as the next supreme leader, has been in a coma and in a hospital in Tehran. But this is risky. Again, you see the Persian Gulf. There's 20% of the daily oil and gas that the world consumes comes through the Persian Gulf in the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran knows this. They're basically, to a certain extent, holding the world hostage because of the importance of that oil and gas. Another thing, I don't think the United States, possibly Israel, expected missiles and drones to attack the Emirates, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Kuwaitis, in a very vicious way. And fortunately, they had weapons program, missile defense program, platforms put in place, also the capacity to be able to take some of the drones down. So I think this is a very significant surprise. And another thing that's very critical here is most of these Middle Eastern countries that I just mentioned, they receive 75 to 95% of their drinking water from desalination. And that was going to be another target of Iran. These are very, very shrewd people, these Iranians. So they were going to hit the oil, and they were going to hit of all these countries. They hit Qatari's natural LNG, liquefied natural gas, which is going to cost them $20 billion a year in revenue. So they hit back in ways that Israel and the United States, I don't completely thought would happen. And President Trump, with his bravado and his way of speaking, gave an ultimatum and then gave another extension and then another extension. And then in his final extension, he was saying some things that shocked the world. But the ceasefire agreement that's in place right now is a 2-week agreement. This 2-week agreement, the negotiations are going to start with the Pakistanis sponsoring it, J.D. Vance, the vice president, Steve Witkoff, and Kushner on Saturday. And already you're seeing Iran posture. There's supposedly a 10-point plan that Iran's given the White House. And then J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, said there's actually 3 10-point plans. One that looked like it was prepared in ChatGPT, another one that had some ideas, and a third one that was more workable more agreeable to President Trump. So the question is, but this is very typical. Iranians are master negotiators. They'll agree to a deal at the last minute, retrade the deal. And they play games. And now they're saying Israel is still hitting inside of Lebanon, and that was supposed to be part of the ceasefire agreement, but President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu says no, that was not part of the ceasefire agreement. But now Iran is making that a big deal. That better stop, or we're going to walk the deal.
Not only Iran, but all the nations.
Other nations as well, especially Pakistan, who's already chastised Netanyahu, talking about war. Turkey as well. The enemies of Israel, especially Turkey and Pakistan, have chastised Israel. But I think Israel had an idea, Tanya, that something was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why they were within 10 short minutes, 100 targets were hit.
Yeah.
And it was devastating to Hezbollah.
But that is the strategies of the Israelis. They were born to fight. They pray, Lord, train my hands to fight, like King David.
Self-defense.
They did not do this more because President Trump would restrain them. So
they're being restrained to a certain extent right now, but President Trump saying, for the sake of the ceasefire agreement, would you basically restrain? The defense minister of Israel, Katz, says we're going to stay at it. We're going to keep at it. There's a willingness, obviously, with Netanyahu and Trump to try to make at least an effort at the ceasefire agreement to work. But Netanyahu's been dealing with the Iranians forever. He knows the chance of a ceasefire agreement, agreeable agreement, being accepted by Iran is slim to none. Reparation for the damage, moving the Middle East, moving the United States out of the Middle East, no ballistic missiles, no uranium or uranium enrichment. I mean, these are just a few deal breakers. So we're dealing with the man that wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, against some of the shrewdest, most clever, three-dimensional chess player that President Trump has ever dealt with. And the thing is, Iran knows they have a lot of leverage because they front the Persian Gulf. They also front the Strait of Hormuz. They're trying to get money off of ships that they are allowing to get through. And one of the directors or one of the leaders of Oman says that's free passage. Iran doesn't have the right to take money from these oil containers that are going through the Strait of Hormuz, which Oman and Iran front. Iran and Oman front the Strait of Hormuz. So the bottom line, Tania, you and I have been talking about this a lot, ebbing and flowing, how this has been playing out. Is NATO going to help? Is NATO not going to help? We've had some great, interesting dialogue because from your 34 years of being in the Netherlands and even knowing the Secretary General Mark Rutte, you know the way that he handles negotiations.
And it surprised me that many people thought that Saudi Arabia would help. You'd come with help, and I've always said to you, and you also said they don't do it.
Well, Saudi Arabia was really, even last week, they talked about helping.
Yeah, they always do, right? In the White House.
Yeah, they have a tendency to do that monetarily for the Palestinians or whatever. But the challenge for Saudi Arabia is 90 to 95% of their oil is refined in the northeast corner of the country, right off the Persian Gulf. And also they are surrounded, many Shiites, which are obviously pro-Iran, live around the refineries that are there in Saudi Arabia. And there has been some refinery fires. Saudis have a pipeline that brings 7 million barrels a day across the country into the Red Sea, but the Houthis are also threatening to attempt to close the Red Sea to stop that oil and gas, or especially oil, to get through the Red Sea so the Saudi oil can hit the international markets. And it's going to take a while to bring the pipelines from Saudi Arabia through the Red Sea through Israel, which is one future course. But the bottom line is the oil is so important to the economies of the world. I mean, look what's happening right now with the price of Texas, West Texas oil and Brent the price there, the cost for airlines, diesel, fertilizer, helium, all that comes through the Persian Gulf. The Iranians know exactly the leverage they have. President Trump was possibly, there was even rumors that he was going to try to take over the Karg Island, where 90% of Iran's oil flows through into the containers into the big containers to leave the Persian Gulf. But the bottom line is, next few days, negotiations, we're going to watch this very carefully, and Iran is already negotiating in the media, at the same time chastising Israel.
And I I ask you to pray because I think there's no other way here than prayer. Only with the intervention of the Lord Almighty Jesus Christ, Yeshua, and his power, because we are dealing here with very evil powers, very, very evil powers that want to destroy America, that wanted to destroy the values of this country. More, I live in America, and I was brought up in Europe. And when you are in Europe, they make everything to change your mind against America. Nobody knows that. They think that Europe is an ally. No. Even for small children, they learn that America is nothing. And the only thing don't like America. America exaggerates. America is this. And like I opened the Dutch newspapers. I opened the German newspapers, the French newspapers, Le Figaro, and all those newspapers are speaking bad about America and about Trump. They have no respect whatsoever. They don't have a model as an ally. An ally won't do that, but they do it behind your back. And so I think it's very important that we pray. We continue to pray because it's becoming very, very messy.
Very complicated. And also, we need to certainly pray. I agree 100%, Tanya. We need to pray for President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu. President Trump is talked about getting out of NATO, and they passed something in 2023. And I think even Secretary of State Rubio was one of the one that initiated the bill that Congress has to approve any removal of the United States from NATO. So I know,
And if they do, who is gonna lose is only Europe. Okay?
yeah, and
America won't lose.
I don't know if we have the votes for the United States to
No,
leave
I don't
NATO,
think.
but the bottom line is we can diminish the amount of people that the United States
It's a lot of money.
has in Europe. It's a tremendous amount. And this war with Trump and NATO. I was in Brussels, Belgium, in May 2017 when President Trump was there, complaining about the brand new $1.25 billion NATO building. And he said, we have 28 countries in NATO and only 4 are paying their 2% of the gross domestic product for defense. He was furious. Well, eventually a lot of those countries caught up, and now they're even paying up to 5%. But the bottom line is President Trump and the world does not need a paper tiger. Russia's watching this very, very carefully to see the role. This is a very interesting, biblically and prophetically significant time.
Absolutely.
Only God knows how it's all going to play out. It is incredibly interesting. We know the time clock is Jerusalem and Israel. We know that what's taking place right now is prophetically significant. We don't know the timing, but we are certainly watching the final day players take their positions. And once again, God allowed the Arabs and the Persians to have a lot of oil, which is a very key final day component to the acceleration of final day events. So it's going to be very interesting, Tanya, watching how things play out this next couple days into this weekend and next week during the ceasefire discussions. And again, Iranians are master negotiators, and Witkoff and Kushner and Vance are going to have their hands full, not to forget President Trump.
Pray for them. Pray
Yes.
for them, please. There's our president needs our prayer. Everybody in the administration needs our prayer. I think America is the one that has lost most in this war. And it's not, I'm not against Israel. I'm pro-Israel and I fight for Israel, but this has going a little bit too far for America. And we have to stand for America, for the values of America, and that we don't have the problems in the generations to come.
And President Trump was hoping for a different Middle East. He has good relationships with the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, Egypt to a certain extent, Turkey to a certain extent, but he wanted a new Middle East, a peaceful Middle East, a Middle East where there was going to be commerce and opportunities, and where some of these wealthy Middle Eastern countries were going to invest in the United States, and he was promoting peace, not thinking of covenant. And we've focused a lot on the Abrahamic covenant, and we are seeing Abrahamic covenant property and land in the Middle East being thought about once again. President Trump just 10 days ago was talking about persuading the Saudis to agree to a Abrahamic covenant deal with Israel. So lots happening right now, a lot that's prophetically significant that's happening right now. And again, as Tania has emphasized, we need to pray for our leaders right now at a very crucial diplomatic, biblical, and prophetic time. Please subscribe to our YouTube. And also, we have a weekly news report and commentary that Tania and I write, and that can be found at williamkoenig.com.
And share to your families, share to your friends, and don't forget to send your prayer needs.
And Tania and I look forward to keeping you all informed.
God bless you.